some of the biggest what-ifs in college football this year. Let me bounce you a wild scenario from the Big Ten. Oregon and Ohio State. Everyone expects them to do big things this year, right? I do too. What if neither one of them makes the Big Ten championship game? How would this happen? Is this even possible? Well, it's improbable, but it is possible. I had Stats and Info run the numbers, and mathematically, it's possible. This is number 1 and number 2 in odds to win the Big Ten. They have top 3 or top 4 odds, each one of them, to win the whole thing this year. So yeah, keeping them out of a 12-team playoff would be a stretch. Crazy things happen all the time in this sport. So let's just say, what happens? The Will Howard experiment doesn't pan out at Ohio State. The offensive line costs them a couple of games. Oregon, who knows, maybe they're not as ready physically as we thought they'd be to join the Big Ten. Whatever happened. Maybe it's just big injuries on both teams. Whatever happens. If they're out, who was responsible for it? If it was injury, okay, that's one thing. But if they're relatively healthy and they both get bounced out of this thing, they're not even playing in Indianapolis, that means there were at least 2 teams in the conference better than them, because we're not in a division era anymore. We just flat out take the best 2 teams. Was there a dark horse that emerged? Certainly Michigan had to be part of this, because Michigan plays both of these teams. So I've got to assume Sharon Moore and Michigan just soared this year. If Ohio State and Oregon are out of the thing, they're not in the Big Ten title game. But who else? Or whomst else? Did Lincoln Riley and USC really make that big of a statement? Did Nebraska come from the rafters? Luke Fickell, Wisconsin, year 2? What happened? Penn State? Penn State, it very well could be Penn State. What has to have happened? Not for them to miss the playoff. We're talking about them missing the conference championship game. And then, well, we were talking about that as a staff earlier today. Somebody who shall remain nameless, but rhymes with Jaducer Pesci, said, well, this would be good for the Big Ten, right? Because that means that quality depth must have emerged. I would counter with this: no. That's my counter. No. To a point, I get it. Like, to a point, yeah, it'd be great, like we talked about the other night, if Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Penn State, whoever you want to throw in there, they formed this solid tier 2 at the expense of Ohio State and Oregon not even playing in Indianapolis. I'm not sure if we might not have pushed it a little bit too far there for the Big Ten. Reasonable minds can disagree on that one. Next up, probably harder to believe for some folks than the first one. What if Florida is a top 15 team this year? Stop laughing. Be respectful. Let's just talk this through, you and I. What if they're a top 15 team? Not top 5, not even top 10, just 13, 14, 15, somewhere around there. Well, first off, I'm a believer that if Florida really is the 15th best team in the country this year, they'll never finish ranked 15th. Because if Florida is the 15th best team in the country, and you look at their schedule, they probably still play 5 teams minimum better than 15th in the country. And if we just draw it out on paper like it normally would play out, they could be like a 6-6 or 7-5 team and reasonably be the 15th best team in the country. Well, they wouldn't be ranked 15th at that point. So then you get to the whole, how do you judge them? How would anyone know? Forget 15, even if they're 20th. If Florida's the 20th best team in the country, that means they're better than what you thought they were preseason. Because hardly anyone thinks they're one of the 20 best teams. So if they're the 20th best team at the end of the year, technically they overachieved from a raw performative standpoint. Would you be able to measure it accurately? In other words, would you be able to watch Florida and know they're any good? Part A. Part B, how would Billy Napier be judged? Would people be fair on it? Would they realize, wow, he just improved this team. Record doesn't look like it, but he just improved this team. I have no idea. I'd have to see it play out. And number 3, we're going to go way off the grid for this one. Will Rogers, where is he? Anyone remember? He's not in Starkville anymore. He's in Washington. He's in Seattle. What if Will Rogers is a top 5 quarterback this year? Did Jed Fish pull this off? How would this go down? There are new staff at Washington, new quarterback. 20 of 22 starters are replaced. Everyone thinks it's just a total reset job up there. Me included, I think that. Not a total reset in terms of, like, you got to start from 1 or 2 wins and work your way up, but it's newness. It's just a lot of newness. Washington's program was actually left in a very good way. So, a lot of the skeleton, the nuts and bolts of the program, they're in a really good way. It's just a lot of unknown. Well, if all of a sudden part of the unknown is known, and that known is, Will Rogers is top 5 quarterback this year, that would mean that Washington ended up being obviously way better than they're expected. And guess who they play this year? They play Michigan, they play USC, they play at Oregon, they play, I believe, at Penn State. So it would mean, in the aggregate, a lot of those teams ended up getting tests that they didn't think they'd get. Over-under win total 6.5 for Washington. Coming off a national championship appearance. Coming off a playoff win over Texas. Coming off beating Oregon twice last year. Why do I not remember those games? Oh, it's because I picked against them both times, and I tried to erase it from my memory. So, yeah, that's what if's all about, man. Throw the craziest stuff imaginable out there. Maybe some of it will stick.